charge you, inshallah ta'ala, on the first day of Ramadan, just to welcome Ramadan bi'idhnillahi ta'ala with a sadaqah. So may Allah bless you all for your support throughout and accept it. All right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So the title definitely speaks to something that a lot of people don't know about, which is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had sent the people home for Taraweeh in a very interesting hadith, and two narrations in fact that we look at. One of them is the hadith of Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took a room made of date palm leaves, mats in the masjid. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed for a few nights in the masjid in Ramadan until the people started to gather behind him in the masjid. So this is basically Taraweeh. And so on the fourth night, the people did not hear the voice of the Prophet ﷺ leading the prayer, and they thought that he had slept. So to give you some context, the Prophet ﷺ was praying in the masjid in the nights of Ramadan, Taraweeh prayer. Taraweeh is a later name to describe Qiyam in Ramadan, the night prayer in Ramadan. And as the companions were finding out, they were quickly gathering behind him on a nightly basis, to a point that another narration says the doors of the masjid were bursting open and that the masjid was completely full. So this isn't just a 21st century phenomenon that the masjids become fuller in Ramadan, even with the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. And as they were gathering behind the Prophet ﷺ, the first night, then the second night, then the third night, and word was quickly spreading that the Prophet ﷺ was leading Qiyam in the masjid in Ramadan, on the fourth night, the Prophet ﷺ did not come out and the people did not hear his voice in recitation. So some of them went by his door. They waited by the door of the Prophet ﷺ for some time. And then they started to, make a humming sound or to make some sort of sound, hoping that it would cause the Prophet ﷺ to come out. Then the Prophet ﷺ said that you continued doing what I saw you doing until I was afraid that this prayer might become enjoined upon you. It might become mandatory for you. And if it were enjoined upon you, you would not be able to continue performing it. Therefore, O people, perform your prayers at your homes, for the best prayer of a person is what is performed at his home, except for the maktuba, except for the mandatory prayers. So this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is telling the people to pray their Taraweeh prayers at home, and it was in his lifetime. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ only led the companions in prayer for 3 nights. Now, why is it still a sunnah for us? Because the Prophet ﷺ established it as a sunnah to pray in the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Tamassaku bi sunnati," to hold on to my sunnah, and the sunnah of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, al-Mahdiyin, of the rightly guided caliphs. And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu gathered the people as they were praying in smaller congregations in the Ramadan nights. He gathered the people once again behind a single imam to revive what the Prophet ﷺ had started, because the fear that it would become fard was no longer there. So the Prophet ﷺ's fear was that it would become obligatory on the people to perform it as such if they continued to do it on a regular basis and they were no longer able to distinguish it. So that was the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ, and obviously divinely guided to ensure that it was still looked at as a sunnah. It was looked at as a voluntary prayer and not a mandatory prayer. Now there are all sorts of discussions to come out of this from a fiqhi perspective. One of them, from the sense of jurisprudence, is it then better to pray at home even when Taraweeh is taking place in the masjid? Is it better to pray at home, or is it better to pray with the congregation in Taraweeh? So that's a difference of opinion that the scholars maintained about whether it was better to pray in Taraweeh in the masjid, the Qiyam in the masjid in Ramadan, or to pray Qiyam at home. But I want to speak to how important this is to us right now. Understanding this particular hadith for us right now, and these narrations for us right now.